Good morning, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So lots of great stuff to go over this morning as usual. And starting out, we're going to go over the stats. And the number of properties that sold last week, single family homes, was 350. The week before it was 345. So exactly where we want to be in regards to that for this time of year. And the median price of the single family homes increased a little bit to 425. So that's always great. And the inventory increased by 3. Now that's what I like to see because the inventory isn't going up exactly last week. So that's awesome because, you know, in the last few years, we've gone from a half a month's inventory to now we're looking at 5.5 months inventory. A normal market is considered between 4 and 6. Below 4 is considered a seller's market, and above 6 is considered a buyer's market. So we're very close to a buyer's market. Buyers definitely have a lot more choices than they used to. And so as a result of that, the houses are staying on the market a little bit longer. You definitely have to put your best foot forward in regards to getting your house sold. Now, I was showing some houses this week to somebody, and there were some of them that were on the market for hundreds of days, and some of them that were on the market just for 3 days. And the interesting thing about the one that was on there for 3 days versus the 100 days is really the pricing and how they did it. And basically, you know, the one that was on for 3 days, already when we had seen it, already had 2 offers. Excuse me. And then the one that was on for 100 plus days still doesn't have any offers. And both of them were very nice houses and everything. The one actually had a very nice view out the back. It was very serene. It was on probably a man-made pond, retention pond kind of thing, because it had a fountain in the middle and all of that kind of good stuff. But there were swans that were, swimming around in the water and ducks and all that kind of stuff. And it was just very peaceful. So that property already had 2 offers on it by the time we saw it with 2 days in, whereas the other property had nothing. And, they were priced really very similar. So what happened is that the people that were selling the one with the pond, they actually were very smart in doing it and making sure that they were putting the best foot forward. They knew that the pond was not necessarily going to get them more money, but what it was going to do is it was something that was going to get more people that liked their house. And generally, that's what happens. And so that's what you have to look at. So going across the board here, under 250, going back to our stats, there were 46 of them that were under 250, 26 between 250 and 300, 86 between 300 and 400, 72 between 400 and 500, 98 between 500 and a million, and there were 22 over a million. So the months of inventory as we're going across, 5.5 overall, like I told you, and then 3.25 under 250, 4.49 250 to 300, 4.67 300 to 400, 5.39 when we get to 400 to 500, 6.87 500 to a million, and 8.92 when we go over a million. So as the market goes up, there's more people that are obviously selling at those price points, which is making that 5.5 stand out, whereas under 250, there's still only 3 months of inventory. And so, when you're looking at it, again, you've got to look very local. You've got to look at what's going on and all of that kind of good stuff. So when we're looking at the list to ask price ratio, it's at 96.54 overall, which is down a little bit. I must say it's been about 97, but under 250 was at 95, over a million was at 92, and then all the rest of them were at 97 or 98, all those other things. So the amount, over a million and the under 250 basically made it so that it's looking like it's at 96.64 as opposed to about 98, which is what the middle ranges basically are. The days on the market is at 73. So that kind of tells you what's going on in single family homes. Then when we look at condos, townhomes, and villas, there were 95 that sold last week, 94 the week before. So again, very similar in the number. The price went down to 246, which was down 4%. But basically, that's within the range of what the condos are go for. 1 week it's at 250, the next week it's close to 300. And so it just kind of goes back and forth. So we're only looking at a week, so it's a really good thing to look at. And that inventory increased by 7, again, not a lot, which is awesome in my opinion, because that just shows that the market is stable and we're kind of leveling off and everything, in my opinion. So when we're looking at all of the stats when it comes to the condos, townhomes, and villas, then of those 95 that sold, there were 48 that were under 250, 21 between 250 and 300, 12 between 300 and 400, 10 between 400 and 500, 3 between 500 and a million, and there was one that sold over a million. So when we're looking at months of inventory when it comes to the townhomes and condos and villas, we're at 10.22, overall. Under 250, we're at 8.34. Then we go to 7 up to 300. Then 300 to 400, we're looking at 19 months of inventory. We go to 11 when 4 to 500. Then we go back to 22 months of inventory between 500 and a million. And it's saying that there's 5 months of inventory over a million. But that's kind of skewed because we're only looking at 1 week, remember, and we went 3 weeks in a row without a sale. So that probably puts it that it's close to the 500 to a million, maybe a little bit better than that, but not too much. So basically, when we're looking at that, that's where you can skew the stats all over everywhere. So I always look for trends to see what's going on, and that's why I go through these every week to make sure that I know basically what's going on and in the market. 95.11 is basically list to ask price ratio, and under 250 it was at 93.49. Then, surprisingly enough, we go up to like 97 all the way across until we get to the over a million, and that was at 89. So basically, when you're looking at it, and let's just look at this week from 300 to 400, there were 19 months of inventory. So that means over a year and a half worth of inventory. So you can totally see where it really makes a big difference in regards to what you do in order to, make your place stand out. And you definitely need to do that if you're in that price range or if you're in a condo, townhome, and villa, just because of the volume and everything of what's going on in the market, that there's a lot more on the market than there is buyers right now. And so you definitely have to watch out for that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's going on with my voice this week. It's kind of going in and out, but we'll try to just keep on pouring on and go from there. But when it comes down to it, and you're looking at selling or buying, you need to look at these stats so you know kind of what's going on. And the people that are, kind of in the higher ranges in a specific development, you're generally not going to get as many viewings as somebody that's in the right price point. And that definitely, and you could say, hey, I want this development, but if 20 properties come up, you're going to say, no, thank you. I really don't need to see all 20. I just want to see 10 and get a good idea. So you're not necessarily going to pick the most expensive ones to look at because you can get, ones that you think are just as good for less price. So that's when price really matters when you're looking at that. And I know a lot of people, when they're going to sell their property, they're like, oh, I just want to test it. I want to see what it's like and all of that kind of stuff. And you're really doing yourself a good service. Remember, I was talking about this house that I showed earlier this week that one of them had been on the market for hundreds of days and the other one had only been on the market 2 days. The one with 2 days had multiple contracts on it. The one with hundreds of days had nothing going on with it. And basically that's kind of what the bottom line is. It's like if you're not priced right, you're not going to get people seeing it. You're not going to get offers. You're not going to get any of that stuff going on. And actually the one that was priced that was on the market for hundreds of days, it had started out at the same price as the one that had contracts on it now, but now it's down like 30 or 40,000. And so it really is important for pricing your property correctly. And I definitely talk about that all the time. But if you're a buyer and you're looking at a house that's been on the market for a period of time, and a lot of times people say, oh, what's wrong with that house? And many times there's absolutely nothing wrong with that house. The thing is that what it is that what's going on with that house is that basically the people are, they wanted to get more money for it and they're not necessarily able to now. And so basically what you want to do is that you want to go ahead and figure out what you can do in order to, to make your house stand out so it goes quickly, you get multiple offers, and that's always when you're going to get the most amount of money for your property. But what I was starting to say, that if you're a buyer and you're out there and you're looking at properties that have hundreds of days on it, it doesn't necessarily mean that anything's wrong with it. It's just maybe that they priced it incorrectly at the beginning. They didn't have good pictures. There's a lot of stuff that could have happened. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was looking at an article that I was reading today in regards to home inspections, and it's like, should you get one or shouldn't you, or anything. And I always think that getting a home inspection is worth it so that you know exactly kind of what's going on, but it's not the be all and the end all. Basically, what they're going to do is it's going to identify some things that maybe you didn't notice right away or that you didn't see or unseen, but it doesn't mean that 100% of everything is going to be discovered in the home inspection. There are limits and everything to it. And so basically, that my opinion is that the way to do it is to have the home inspector do their job. And then when they're done, you can meet with them and they can go through and show you all the things that they found. Most home inspectors like to go around and do everything on their own, so then they're not distracted or anything with that. And then they can go through what they found with you on the report and point that stuff out while they're still at the house. So that's what I think is the best practice in regards to doing home inspections, which, I've been involved in thousands of them. So, not because I've done them, but in the houses that I've sold that we've been involved with. And I think that works out best. And the reason is that, they do take pictures today and put them all in the reports and everything. They usually have red things, which means stop, that something that you might want to pay attention to. Then they have like yellow things that are warnings, that are things that eventually down the line that you might have to look at, or that are just maintenance things that you need to be aware of. Not even anything wrong with the house right now, but they might just be pointing out different things that you need to do. Maybe it's I'm just trying to think of what a warning would be, and I can't think of anything right now. But then you've got the green, which means it's all serviceable, is what their word is usually for it, which means that it's working and there aren't any problems or anything with it. And so basically when you're doing that, I do believe that most people should get them. There's a few investors that I work with that don't get home inspections, but everybody else does. And the reason that you want to get them is that, is that you want to see things that you can't see now. I recently sold a house, and basically they had a home inspector that came out there, and when he got done, it's like you'd have thought, oh my gosh, this house, nobody's going to buy it. It's in terrible shape, all of that kind of stuff. He said that there were, a lot of wood rot that was going on the outside. And he said there were termites, and there was this and there was that and everything. And it just sounded terrible. Now, what you need to do in the inspection period is that's not where it ends with that home inspector. Because when you look at the report, you're going, oh my gosh, I really don't want to buy this house, which is what the buyer was kind of thinking. And so I said, well, this is what we need to do. We need to get, a couple of quotes in here from contractors that will come and give us bona fide quotes and let us know what the real damage is. Is it really as doom and gloom as this inspector is saying? Because I can't believe that it is. And because it doesn't, really look that bad. And when I sent the report to the contractor, he was thinking the same thing. He said, oh my gosh, this house has got to be terrible. But then when he got to the house and he gave a quote and everything on what it was, it was $5,000, which, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money that we were able to negotiate off the price of the house, but that's a lot different than $50,000, which is what we all thought before he went out there. And so basically, when it comes down to it, that's the best way to go about it and get everything done and all of that kind of stuff, is to make sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's and all of that kind of good stuff happened. And so basically, with that was a huge amount of things that, when you were looking at the house, you might have said, oh, there's a little bit of wood rot here, but you didn't really know what it was. And it was all around the French doors, and it was, water damage is basically what had caused it and everything. And so we were able to, like I said, negotiate off that $5,000 off of the price. But basically, the bottom line is that if we hadn't had that home inspection, then that would have been one thing. But because we did not, because we did go to that next step and found out that it really wasn't that big a deal. And I did, talk to the buyer, and I said, do you really want this home? And the buyer is like, yeah, I definitely want this home, but obviously he was a first time buyer, and he was like, I don't want to have it with a lot of problems and going to cost me a lot more money than I'm expecting. And I'm like, I don't want that for you either, but let's find out exactly what the scoop is on it so we can make an informed decision and not make a decision that's just off the cuff or whatever. And so that inspector had kind of overinflated in regards to what was going on with the house. But we were able to come to terms with the seller, get exactly, what he wanted, what he needed to get, and all of that kind of good stuff, which made a huge difference in regards to, the buyers feeling comfortable moving forward and knowing what the scoop is. So when you have that inspection period, the biggest thing that you want to do is that you do want to get that inspection done as soon as possible. So say you have 7 days, say you have 10 days, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you get that done immediately. And then the next thing that you'll do after you have that home inspection is that you'll look at it, and if there are other additional inspections that you need to do, like with a contractor, with a plumber, with a roofer, that you've got time to do it. And that's what I think a lot of people miss, is that they think just the home inspection is the only thing that's important. No, you have to go that next step and figure out what else needs to be done or what else needs to be inspected potentially to make sure that it's going to be a good deal. So basically what might happen is that you might have to extend that inspection time if something is found. And so that's kind of what the bottom line is. So what we do is that, with our sellers, is that we offer them one of our programs, which is a certified pre-owned home. And with that, the inspection's already done. We've already done it. So the seller's not going to come up with anything that's going to be a big surprise, to them as they're going through that process. And the buyer doesn't either. I mean, they're more than welcome to do their own inspection with their own inspector. And we definitely recommend that if they want to do that, that's not a big deal. But basically, when you're doing that, what it does is it ensures that basically, you're getting exactly what you want. The one of my recent properties that we did do that certified pre-owned home on, we did the inspection. And when we did get the buyer on it, there was one thing with the air conditioning that was a problem. The seller had fixed it, but what the buyer wanted to do is they just wanted to inspect the air conditioner to make sure that everything had been properly fixed. And then after that, that was the only inspection that they did. So that was their choice, and it saved them time, energy, and effort, and actually made the sale go smoother and everything like that as well. So basically, when it comes down to it, you want to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to make your house stand out. Like we talked about, that we're getting very close in all markets to be absolutely at buyer's market. So as a seller, you'll want to stand out. And just like those certified pre-owned cars stand out, our certified pre-owned homes stand out as well. So if you want to get one of those, give me a call and I can certainly help you with that. And if you want to have one of those, give me a call and we can help you with that as well. So either way, we make those things happen. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestaterradio.com. And I will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty. And to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So one of the things that happened this week that I think is great is that the 30-year mortgage fell below 6% for the first time in a long time. I don't know how long it's been, but basically it's at 5.98, so barely there. But that was actually on the 26th, which I believe was Thursday. I believe was that day. And for a 15-year mortgage, it went to 5.44. And so that's kind of a magic number. It's like 5.99 is better than 6 in everybody's eyes. So basically, the things that we had looked for a long time to get back to affordability, this is the kind of thing that definitely helps us out. And so basically 1 year ago, the rate was averaged at 6.76, and the 15 year, like I said, is now at 5.44. So basically that's a very great decline that's going on. And I definitely think that will help us out when it comes to buyers and affordability and everything. Our market stalled, which I think all of you guys know if you listen to the show, is basically when the mortgage rates went from like 3% to 4% to 5% to 6%, and it went up pretty quickly. I would say that it went up, I would say in the neighborhood of, gosh, I want to say in like 3 or 4 months. It just kind of like, it was like, okay, we're going up. And I remember when the interest rates went down, which I don't know how long ago that was. It was probably, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And basically, I remember that people were telling me all the time, they're like, well, this rate isn't going to last and everything. And I'm like, no, I know it's not going to last, but it is lasting for now. And so you definitely want to do what you can do, to make things happen. And a lot of people refinanced. Anybody that could did. And so, when they're sitting there with an interest rate of, there's people's houses that I've sold at 2.75, 3%, all of those kinds of things, that they actually have an assumable mortgage that makes it so that people go, wow, I'll definitely take that over and everything. Now, the thing that they usually forget to tell you is that there's mortgage insurance on those properties, not if it's a VA loan necessarily, but if it is a FHA, which is the other one that's usually assumable, there is also mortgage insurance. So that makes the effective rate even higher than what it originally is, but it's still really a good rate. So basically, when it comes down to it, affordability is all what people can pay. And that is all regulated. That they want to make sure that you're not house poor and you have no money to do anything other than pay for your house. And so as a result of that, they make sure that the mortgage payment is not too outlandish or anything like that for you. And that's what the ratios are. They want to make sure that your overall debt is not over like 50%. And your mortgage is usually, 37, 40, somewhere in that range at the most. So that's why when you're going to get a house, they always say, don't get a new car, don't get new appliances, don't use your credit for anything, because anything that you do is going to add to that debt ratio. It's not that your credit score is going to be affected. It's your debt ratio to the amount of income. And you've got to have a good debt ratio in order to afford a house. So when the interest rate goes down, then obviously it makes it so people can afford it. So the fact that we are just edging into the fives is a great thing. Hopefully it will continue to go down. And it doesn't have to go down to the threes and that kind of stuff again. But I think if it was stayed at that 5 ratio, but 5.0, I think that that's actually kind of the magic number. And the reason, and one proof that I have that that's so is kind of like that's what the builders are offering. In order to move their inventory, they're buying down the rate on a lot of properties down to that 5% so that buyers can afford them. And so that's what they've done. So I'm sure that they've built that into their pricing and everything like that. It's going to cost them 20 or 30,000 in order to buy down that rate to that level. But that's what they've been doing. And guess what? They've been selling houses and they've been moving inventory. And so you can't fight with it. It's absolutely, what it is, supply and demand, who can afford it, and all of that kind of good stuff. And so that's what we run into, and basically the bottom line in regards to what's happening. So one thing that I wanted to also talk about today was yard upgrades, which I'm not going to get through to all of it, in this segment. But basically when it comes down to it, that yard upgrades make a big difference. And when we're looking at most of our yards today, because the freeze came through, that hard freeze that we generally don't have, most everybody's yards are looking a little brown, which they usually do not do. And so as a result of that, and I'm like going myself, because I'm not a plant expert by any stretch of the imagination. And so I was reading up on it and seeing, do you cut them down or do you wait until the leaves fall off? And then if there's new leaves and new growth, then you're good. And that's basically what I've read. And so what I'm kind of waiting for, and I'm sure some of them are not any good anymore, but I'm going to wait and make sure that everything is as much as I can. Instead of replacing the stuff that's been there for like 20, 25 years and everything, and just cutting it down. But I remember when I first moved here, there was a really hard freeze, and that was in 2000. So that was, 26 years ago. It was in January when we had a really hard freeze. And I think it was in 2001 when that freeze came through. And so I had somebody come by, a neighbor that was actually doing the landscaping, and he said that that we were going to have to cut everything down and all of that kind of stuff, and the fee for that was $1,000. So it wasn't a cheap amount because there was a lot of foliage in the yard, and what I found out later is that we cut some stuff back way too far. There were certain things that didn't need to be cut back, like, for example, the roses. So I had roses growing up on both sides of the, kind of like a trellis as you walk into the house, and they were just beautiful. And they did freeze and everything a little bit. And so, and I've still got some of them today, and they did freeze. But basically, I've already seen the new growth that's coming out on them. So you definitely want to make sure that you're, waiting and seeing. And I am not the plant expert. Trust me. I always tell everybody I think I have the brown thumb, so I'm not the green thumb person. But basically, all of our yards are looking a little bit tired right now. And so if you're going to, we'll talk about yard upgrades that make a big difference in regards to the foliage. And I know everybody probably has work that they need to do, but I'm in a wait and see mode myself, and I'm sure you are possibly as well. I know there's one of my neighbors cut everything back and everything already, but I'm kind of waiting and seeing what's going on. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So like I was starting to talk in the last segment, yard upgrades make a big difference. And today everybody is a little accommodating because of the freeze, and everybody knows that everything's not looking the best that it could. And so, as we go along, these are the things that really definitely help. That would be adding pops of color. And so you could do that through, plants. With you have them in pots and everything, as well as the annuals and all those kinds of good things that actually go in the ground. So that's something that you want to do. One of the things that I think is most important is native plants. And they, basically won't, when it comes down to that they're for this area. I remember, I was working with somebody in Celebration, and they wanted to go ahead and they wanted to put, redo their landscaping and everything like that. And they couldn't go to the architectural review meeting. So I actually went for them. And the thing that was interesting, and I find that if you have something that you need to take to the architectural review board, I always recommend that you go in person, and I'm going to tell you why. And so basically what happened is that, we went in with the plans and all of that kind of stuff, and everything was approved except for one particular plant. And what they said is they said, we're not going to be able to approve this plant because it's not native to this area. And what happens is if you plant this plant, it kind of becomes a predator and it takes over the whole yard. And so instead of using that plant, we suggest this plant. And so that was the only change that they made. And if you hadn't been at that meeting and they weren't able to talk to you, then they would just say, no, we reject your plan for this particular thing. And you think, gosh, they're not very fair or anything, or what's going on or whatever. But basically they had a really good reason for it. And the funny thing is that I did have that particular plant in my yard in a specific spot, and it was taking over everything. And I think, I don't know if I had already taken them down at that time or I'd taken it down shortly after. I think I had already taken them down because they were, they would have taken over like the whole yard for sure. And so I just learned that that's something that's really important, that you want to have plants that are native to our area, that really, reflect it. And I'm kind of driving around now and looking at properties and going, okay, well, those plants survived the frost and they look pretty good. And then I'm like going, oh, well, those bushes, they really didn't last at all. And so, you want to avoid those and that kind of stuff. Not that it freezes that often, but it can be really expensive. And when you go on for years and years and years, I was looking at some one of the plants out there by my fence, and I was like going, wow, I mean, it's been here forever, I think since I moved into my house, and which is over 25 years ago. And basically the bottom line is that now it's that plant doesn't look very good, so hopefully it'll come back. But you definitely want to have native plants, is my point. The next thing is trees for privacy. And this is really a smart way to go in a lot of neighborhoods and that kind of stuff. I remember, one of my clients that bought a house, they wanted to have, some privacy against. They live in a place with an alley, and they wanted to have privacy along there, and they didn't want to have a fence, or they did have a fence, but they didn't want to look at the fence. They wanted to have some greenery in front of it. And so they had the Italian cypress that they put those there. Some people do bamboo. Some people do other kinds of hedges and everything in order to make it look great. And so that's another thing that you can look at that you want to do to make sure that you've got the right thing. And then then the other thing is that it's talking about evergreens, are something that obviously we're all pretty aware of, which I think that Italian cypress might be a member of that family, but I am not a horticulturist by any stretch of the imagination, so I could be completely all wet on that. But basically there's a lot of things out there that everybody wants to look at and see what's going on, and all of that kind of good stuff. So you definitely want to have that curb appeal when people pull up to your home, though. And as a buyer, you want to look at it too. And I think today buyers need to have like a little bit of patience until the warm weather hits and everything starts blooming again, and then it'll make a big difference and all of that kind of good stuff. So basically, I'm just kind of chuckling here because I was just looking at something that it says the 3 changes it could take to fix affordability is the name of this article. Now, I was talking about interest rates earlier, but this is saying that basically it's saying housing affordability remains out of reach for many Americans. And so here's the 3 changes it could take to fix affordability. And I was chuckling because I'm thinking, I don't think this one's going to happen. And it said mortgage rates would need to fall dramatically to roughly 2.65%. Okay, not going to happen. I think, I'm not going to say it's definitely couldn't happen, but the chances that happen are pretty rare. I mean, I don't think that when we had it at 2.65, and that was kind of the absolute low that everything was at. And I think a more realistic rate would be, 4.5, 5. And I think that would be something as well. The second thing that it says, so maybe these are things that they're wishing for, because it says that household incomes would need to surge. And that means that the median income would have to rise about 56% to restore affordability at today's prices and rates. So that's, again, nothing that's probably going to happen. And then it says the third thing is that home prices would need to decline sharply by roughly 35%. So what they're talking about here are basically a lot of things that we really don't want to happen in our economy. If we had some kind of compromise on all of these things, I'm sure it would be great. Like if the interest rates were at 5 instead of being at 7, that they were a year or so ago. And then if the household incomes would go up a little bit, but they're not going to go up 56% probably. That's probably not something that we want. And then the home prices, it's saying a 35% decrease. We don't want to see that, but maybe a 5 or 10% decrease. So there's probably some kind of combination here that would make sense, that would not hurt anybody. Our prices in Central Florida have stayed very consistent since the interest rates went up, and they have not fallen. I take that back. So every time they have gone up, in this whole period, which I think has been about 3 or so years, But last month they went down $300 in the median price range. So that's it, 300, and that's over 400,000, basically is what it is. So $300 is not a big thing in the big scheme of things, but it definitely shows that we're flatlining. We were increasing maybe 1, 2, 3% a year. Now it's kind of flatlining. And so, as the interest rates fall, then that's going to stop the prices from falling and everything as well. So we're in a really good market, a really good place. And if you're ready to buy or sell, could be the time. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you next week, everybody. Have a great one. Bye-bye.